Wait. Oh, I guess that part stuff's not going to get recorded, I guess, but we also have a new ex officio member who is joining us today, John Lyons with the Department of Enterprise Services. And absent, we do have two ex officio members who are absent. Chris Peters was unable to make it. Chris with the Squaxin Island Tribe, and Ty Menser with the Thurston County Commission has expressed his interest in being an ex officio member, but was unable to make it today. So glad to see that our group is growing here. And I'd like to also introduce staff on the call right here. We've got, actually, Eric, do you mind introducing staff?
No, I'd be happy to. I am Eric Christensen. I'm the City of Olympia's Public Works Water Resources Director. With us is also Rich Hoy, the Interim Assistant City Manager, and Lindsay Marquez, our admin assistant who helps us with liaison work.
And we have Dr. Pamela Braff, who's
I'm sorry.
Director of Climate Programs.
I apologize, Pamela.
And I'm Lisa Dennis Perez with Lot Clean Water Alliance.
Excellent. Thanks for jumping in there, Lisa. All right. The first thing that we need to do is approve the agenda. So Leetta or Bob, may I please have a motion to do so?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Excellent. And then we have minutes from our August 5th meeting. I'd entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved. This is Leetta.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now that we've gotten the fun stuff out of the way, we did have somebody sign up for public comment, but I see that they are not in attendance. Oh, and I see Ty Menser is able to join us. Hey there, Ty. Welcome.
Howdy, sorry I'm late. I had some technical issues.
Hey, so did we. We got started late and we've only done introductions, so you haven't really missed anything, but welcome. This is your first meeting as an ex officio member, along with John Lyons from DES. So it's great to have both of you.
Thank you.
For committee business, we have a few items that we want to get through, including some reports and updates in terms of what's happened since we last met, but also looking forward to for our work plan for 2023 and some changes that might be coming about. So Eric, I'll go ahead and pass it on to you to offer what reports and updates you have.
Sure, I've got a presentation here I'd like to share. Maybe just a second here. Are you seeing the screen? Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. As you know, I'm Eric Christensen. I'll be providing you with an update of actions we've taken since we last met and some next steps for the collaborative. There we go. As Chair Madrone has already mentioned, I'd first off like to welcome Thurston County and the Washington Department of Enterprise Services as ex officio associate members. Associate members, just to remind folks, are not bound by the terms of our interlocal agreement, and it doesn't require an amendment to the interlocal agreement, and are not required to provide any kind of support, but they are asked to attend the collaborative meetings, stay apprised of, and support our efforts. Just as a reminder, the Sea Level Rise Response Plan is the strategic plan that guides the collaborative's mission to come together and take action on sea level rise adaptation and support regional climate change mitigation efforts. The plan provides guidance for sea level rise monitoring and adaptation, and identifies adaptation strategies, including physical strategies like building seawalls and berms to prevent flooding, essentially flood barriers. Also operational strategies like emergency management planning and maintenance of our stormwater infrastructure. And then there's governance strategies like updating our plans to integrate sea level rise adaptation and develop this collaborative, and then informational strategies like monitoring sea level rise and providing public outreach. Emergency management planning is one of the operational strategies identified in the plan. The City of Olympia, along with the Lot Clean Water Alliance and the Washington Department of Enterprise Services, met last week to prepare for the wet weather season as it pertains to Capitol Lake. The Department of Enterprise Services Capitol Lake forecasting tool helps us be prepared for high tides and storm events, and this meeting helped us coordinate who's responsible for communications and sandbag deployment. Since we last met, the City of Olympia's storm and surface water utility has installed an additional 2 tide gates around Capitol Lake and replaced the Fiddlehead tide gate, which is depicted here. The 2 tide gates installed at the lake will remedy some street flooding we saw in low-lying areas that were observed during last January's flood event. I might go back just to mention that the Fiddlehead tide gate is one of our largest tide gates. It's 48 inches in diameter, and it serves a drainage area that extends from approximately Anthony's Homeport down to south of Olympia Supply. The city has received the equipment for installation of a tide gauge at the Port of Olympia's marine terminal. Unfortunately, I met with port staff a couple of weeks ago, and the stilling well that had been installed by the USGS has been removed and will need to be replaced. That needs to be done at low tide, and unfortunately this time of year, low tides are only occurring around 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. That will be located here, a cursor. Another interesting thing is that a group called U.S. Harbors also has planned to install a tide gauge at the Swantown Marina. Timing for that, however, is uncertain. Both of these tide gauges will be available online through the cloud. One important aspect of emergency management is protecting the combined sewer and the Bud Inlet treatment plant from being overwhelmed by marine waters and floodwaters. This image indicates those catch basins, the little red dots, that collect water that flows to the Lots Bud Inlet treatment plant. Since we last met, we took delivery of some magnetic catch basin covers shown here on the right. Staff is marking those catch basins that require covers to be placed. This is much better than what we've done in the past with either placing 4 sandbags or taking up the grate and putting essentially a hefty trash bag. So this will be a huge improvement. They'll be reusable. They are essentially giant refrigerator magnets that stick to catch basins. We've done some public outreach, and I believe we sent you links to some of these, at least the City of Olympia's Different Makers blog. Rich Hoy put together a good summary of our sea level rise response efforts. The Municipal Research and Service Center, I think everyone knows it as MRSC, also did a Q&A with Chair Madrone, and that is available. It was another good feature of Olympia, City of Olympia's efforts, or the collaborative efforts. LTA Productions, you may recall, put together an 8-part documentary video series. And since that was completed, they've done a new video that's available on the city's Sea Level Rise webpage. And it depicts the installation of the Fiddlehead Tide Gate. They videoed most of the whole process. It's pretty impressive. Also like to mention that 8-part video series was an award-winning effort. This slide lists some of the key projects we hope to take forward from the work plan in 2023. All of the initial members have budgeted for this work, as indicated in this slide. Key item to do is to perform a satellite land subsidence survey, something called an infometric synthetic aperture radar. This will measure how the land is subsiding, and this is important because land subsidence could amount to as much as 8 inches of sea level rise by 2100, or the end of the century. We also hope to initiate a groundwater study to determine tidal influences in land. And one other strategy is that the Sea Level Rise Response Plan envisioned was to develop a finance group or committee responsible for developing and investigating and implementing long-term financial mechanisms to generate funding for sea level rise adaptation, and also to investigate outside funding opportunities. This group will be key to the success of sea level rise adaptation. We're talking about significant expenditures, and determining how these costs are shared amongst the collaborative members and the community will be critical. In order to do so, we'll need a consultant to help us investigate public financing mechanisms like flood districts, rates, taxes, etc. I'd like to note that since we last met, I've been investigating opportunities for Federal Emergency Management Agency funding. We discussed this, I believe, at our last meeting. Particularly, we were looking at the pre-disaster mitigation program. That makes funds available to plan and implement measures that are designed to reduce the risk from future natural hazards. And that's not necessarily existing, but also future natural hazards. Unfortunately, we are not eligible for funding from FEMA at this time. The Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan expired in July of this year, and a new plan won't be adopted until next year. Hopefully that will be done before the funding cycle starts in September of next year. Thurston Regional Planning Council is heading up that effort. We have 2 key areas where we're most vulnerable to flooding in downtown Olympia. The first and primary is from Capitol Lake, and the second is from West Bay along Percival Landing. We have opportunities coming up. The Olympia Parks Department is looking at expediting their next phase of development of Percival Landing, at which point we will be able to elevate the land surface at that point. We will need to coordinate with that planning effort. And as I'm sure you're all aware, the Department of Enterprise Services issued their final environmental impact statement for the Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary work on Monday. And the EIS identified the estuary alternative as the preferred alternative. I only bring this up because the implications are that flooding elevations associated with Capitol Lake will go down approximately 1 foot, so much lower risk once the estuary is established. However, the frequency of flooding within the park will be more frequent with high tides and won't be controlled by a dam any longer. However, that's controllable. Flooding won't exceed what we saw in January of last year, which was manageable. But along with development of the estuary option, we will need to coordinate with DES and hopefully get the landscape in Heritage Park elevated to some extent for future sea level rise. Okay, as you recall, we adopted a 5-year work plan for the collaborative last year. We've identified key projects within that work plan. We need to look at the work plan on an annual basis, although it is a 5-year work plan. We did provide you a copy or a link to the work plan. Is there any discussion that needs to happen at this time regarding the priorities set in that plan?
Yeah, and I'll also open it up for any questions that anything that Eric has presented on up to this point.
I don't have any questions or comments on the work plan. Good presentation, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah, the work plan is built off table 11 from the Sea Level Rise Response Plan. So if you're interested, it's essentially the same list. However, we have whittled it down in this 5-year work plan.
Leetta, were you about to jump in there?
Thank you, Chair Madrone. Yes, I'm reading it. I'm reading it again, right? Because I read it when I first joined, and then I realized I think I need to read this again. So I'm on chapter 5, and it's pretty comprehensive, and I like what's being presented, and I like the table, because I think I appreciate the flexibility, like always reviewing continuous improvement, using science, right, for what's going on. So I feel comfortable with everything presented, knowing that if something drastically changes, that this plan allows for that flexibility. So thank you.
And Ty, I see your hand there.
Yes, so just going back to that last point about the estuary, I wanted to make sure I understand, because Commissioner Edwards has actually been asking all about this in recent Board of County Commissioner meetings about the flooding connection in the estuary option. And what I understood you to say is that you said flooding is down by 1 foot. And I guess my question is a foot from what? I mean, what's the, and then but you said it's going to be more frequent. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that so I can have a good understanding of that and I can explain it to my colleagues?
Absolutely, certainly. So when I say the flood elevation will go down by 1 foot, that's vertical. So, you know, right now, well, it depends on what datum you're looking in. Right now, the flood elevation, according to FEMA, is 15 feet. And that's the National Vertical Geodetic Datum 1988. And when the dam is removed, the flood elevation will essentially be equivalent to the highest tide, which is currently 14 feet NGBD 88, or an 18-foot mean low water datum. And that's because the dam can't let out as much water at high flow. They do an excellent job of managing the lake now to keep water levels in the lake down at high flows. But once the dam is gone, essentially the flood elevation will be whatever the high tide is. It'll be hydraulically connected to the marine waters. Now, when I say that there will be more frequent flooding, without the dam to manage lake levels, there will be water in the park from time to time around the Arch of Statehood and the path around the park. With the estuary option, that will probably lead to changes to elevation in Heritage Park. Should be eligible for FEMA funding because of the existing floodplain. That get you what you need, Ty?
And does that, it might be a little bit of ignorance on my part, but is that a change, would that situation that you described change over time as sea level rises exacerbate? How's that going to look in 10, 20, 30 years?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, give me just a second here. So the flooding that'll occur once the estuary is established will be nuisance flooding. There won't be any street flooding. We've got good control of the floods. With 12 inches of sea level rise, however, unless the elevation of the park is raised with equivalent amount, we would see flooding in downtown again. It would come over the landscape. The lowest elevation in the park is about just a little over 14 feet, which we can control right now with sandbags. But with sea level rise, by mid-century, we could see that foot of flooding elevation come back. However, we've got other locations within the city, especially along West Bay, that we'll have to remedy by that time. This is really an opportunity to correct our highest risk of flooding to downtown Olympia.
Did they get you what you need, Ty?
Thank you, yes.
Excellent. All right. Well, I've got a question for you, Eric, and maybe this is a segue into a future slide here, but I just noticed for resources, we have listed existing staff. And I understand that we're expecting some changes in staff. So is that something that you were planning on getting into in a future slide, or should we talk about it now?
Yeah, no, I put it on the last slide. I wanted to
Okay.
leave some other business there.
Rich, did you raise your hand?
Well, I can.
I did, Chairman Jerome, thank you. I just wanted to also add for Commissioner Menser, there's some good language in the EIS itself that speaks to the benefits for flood protection from the estuary alternative. I spoke to it briefly in the blog that I wrote that Eric spoke to earlier, but I'd be happy to help connect you to those sections of the EIS report that could help you in those conversations, Commissioner. Thanks,
Rich. That'd be great. I mean, this came up kind of at the 11th hour when we were discussing the MOU, and I got Commissioner Edwards directly in touch with Tessa consultants, and they had a conversation, I think the night before we were supposed to vote. So I don't know how well she did in explaining it to him, but I'd like to know a little bit more about, because I was trying to go through the draft EIS binder to find flooding analysis, and again, it was the last minute and I really couldn't pinpoint what I was looking for. So if you could direct me to the right place,
sure,
I would
happy to.
Rich, I can do that. I've sent that out a dozen times to people, so I've got a kind of pat email. Okay.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you, Eric.
Excellent.
No
Thanks,
problem.
Eric. And Bob, I see you've gone off mute. Do you have something?
Well, we're just gonna make sure that Eric would actually send it to all of us. I'd really like to see that too.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Any other questions at this point? All right, carry on, Eric.
Well, that's really all I had for staff updates. I did feel it's important for us to set up meetings for 2023. Our interlocal agreement or our bylaws say that we will be having meetings on a quarterly basis. We've most recently been doing that on the first Friday of the quarter at noon. So if those dates are still okay, we'll put them on your schedules.
And also a check-in with folks to make sure the noon time is still working. We originally were meeting in the evenings and we switched it to noon for those who it's easier for them to attend during the day, particularly Chris Peters, who also hasn't been able to come to a meeting since we changed the time, but he's a busy guy. But is this time working for us still? Okay, excellent, good. I just wanted to make sure. I know I prefer to save an evening if I can, so excellent. I know that we won't know who's serving on the Sea Level Rise Response Collaborative until we all do our committee assignments next year. But when those are made and finalized, we can make sure that Outlook holds get put out there for your calendars. I know if they're not on mine, I sometimes get double booked, so. All right.
Yes, in that first meeting, you will be electing new chair, vice chair. Okay, and then my final slide, just some other business. The interlocal agreement and the bylaws discuss funding city staff as administrative support or liaison. We just wanted to make you aware that we have no intent to do that in 2022. We haven't had substantial costs. It's been manageable. Thank you very much, Lindsay. You've done a great job. So I just wanted, don't expect an invoice from us. The other thing is, in terms of City of Olympia staff representation, I have announced my retirement effective the end of this year. So in my replacement will be Susan Clark, our current engineering and planning supervisor. Susan was key or an integral part of the development of the sea level rise response plan. She's very familiar with it. She's been active even up into the collaborative and joint administrative committee. And until my replacement, Susan will certainly play that role, and she may play that role on into the future. She'll be backed up by Rich Hoy, of course. He's well informed in sea level rise, and we'll make sure that efforts keep moving. I don't know if you'd like to add anything, Rich?
No, I think you've covered it, other than to say, Eric, your contribution to this work and the development of the sea level rise response plan has been enormous for our city. So there'll be much more to say as we get closer to the day when you retire. But since I have the floor, I just wanted to express my gratitude to you for all you've done to really set this up well, and we will carry it forth. And we will be in good hands. For those of you that haven't worked with Susan, she's tremendous, very knowledgeable about this. So we will work to have this be as seamless as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rich. But I would just like to add that I have a passion for this, and once I have more time in my life, I'd like to continue to play a role in this, maybe as an ex officio member. So I don't plan to go away completely. I'm going to stay in the community.
Well, and I'll also add on to the accolades, Eric. You've done incredible work for the community, both in terms of sea level rise, but also just all the work that you've done for the city of Olympia. And it'll be really hard to replace you. And I'm glad that you expressed your interest in staying involved in this sea level rise work. You carry a lot of institutional knowledge. And so I'll actually look to Bob and Lietta right here in terms of your feelings around including Eric as an ex officio member as we get rolling next year. And if that sounds good to you.
I think it would be foolish if we did not.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, then you haven't seen the last of us, Eric. All right. And does that conclude your updates in the committee business?
That is what I have, unless you have any questions or concerns.
Yeah. Are there any final questions? All right,
Oh,
excellent.
and Lisa Parks has joined us from the Port of Olympia. Hi, Lisa.
Good afternoon. My apologies for being late.
No worries. And I know we set these meeting times for an hour and a half, and they've run considerably shorter than that, which I hope you all see as a gift of your time back. As we get rolling next year with some of these studies to inform the future work around sea level rise, there will be more in-depth presentations and decision-making points. But it looks like we're pretty well set up for 2023. Any final thoughts, closing comments?
Yeah, just wanted I also wanted to just mention, since Dr. Braff is here, that she and I are talking about ways in which our climate program that she leads can get more engaged in the work around the climate resilience efforts, including this work. So we'll be looking at opportunities with additional resources that are coming within our climate program to do that. So I can certainly see Pamela has some tremendous background and experience in sea level rise, and so it'd be good to try and take advantage of that as well. So just wanted to mention that.
Excellent. Good to have you here, Dr. Braff. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, particularly our new ex officio members, Ty and John. It was great to have you. We'll have calendar invites going out for our meetings next year, or early in the year once we know who's sitting on which committees. And look forward to continue to work with y'all. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.